Morning, good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today and this entire week is dedicated by AJ Kidney and Renewal in honor of our partners in Edmund J. Safra Synagogue, saving lives together one kidney at a time. Also, Breakfast in the Class dedicated for a speedy and complete refuah shlema for Eliyahu Shimon Mazal Fortuné and Chanabat Simafega. The learning for this week is dedicated by the Torah Center silver donors Anna and Adam Amsalem in honor of their parents, Kenny and Wilma Ashendorf and Michelle Dum, and their beautiful children, Stella and Samuel. And finally, the week of Cobra was sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do good today and every day. There's one more sign, but I can't really read it myself. Can someone pick up that sign over there? Yeah, that one. Yeah. Just come over here. I need you to read it. Just come over here. I need you to read it. You'll see in a minute why. Sorry, Mechila.
Michelle and Michael Abadi, in honor of Glenn Abadi's 3rd birthday. Okay. Maybe he grow up to be great Talmid Hacham like Rabbi Farhi.
That's why I can't read. I'm not sorry, Mechila. I just don't feel comfortable reading that. You know, I wish you, Michelle and Michael, that your son should become much bigger Talmid Chacham than I ever will be. But that's very, very sweet of you, and inshallah, he should bring you tremendous nachat. Okay, let's begin. My friends, the pasuk tells us, Isha ki Tazria v'yaleda zachar. When a woman will become pregnant and she'll give birth to a zachar. And the pasuk tells us the laws of ta'ara and tum'ah with regards to a woman who gives birth and the process of purification that happens afterwards. My friends, our rabbis tell us a fascinating insight. What's the reason why we find Ishat ki Tazria, that when a woman gets pregnant and give birth to a boy after the previous parasha? We just finished with all of the stories of machalot asurot, of all the things that a person is not allowed to eat. And as we spoke about last week, there was an idea that was put forward by the Chachamim that explains that when a person is nizhar with kosher, they're very careful with kosher, then the child that's born from that has a soul that is pure and that is more elevated. And a child that's born when the parents are not eating kosher doesn't have as an easy time, because the influence on the soul not only affects the person, but also affects the children that are born from that from a person who's eating in that way. And we spoke a little bit about that last week. However, I'd like to take perhaps today a little bit more of a broader look at this point, a wider lens. Let's for a second forget about kashrut. You know, the Chida writes that the pasuk begins Isha ki Tazria v'yaleda zachar. He says ki Tazria v'yaleda zachar. It's the Roshei Tevot of the letters that spell the word zechut, which means it's a woman's merit oftentimes that the children turn out the way that you hope that they will turn out. She sets the tone, she provides the love and the nurturing in the home. And although men, don't worry, you're very important and your guidance is very special, but you know something, a child that grows up with just a mother versus a child that grows up with just a father is worlds away from each other. So of course both parents contribute in a major way. But the contribution of a mother to the nature of the child is far greater. Now, the reason why I'm raising this is not to be able to create equivalencies between parents and how important they are to their children. That's not my aim, and that's not my goal, and that's not my point in bringing in the chidah that says it's the zechut of the isha. That's not my point. My point is this. In the same vein, the Torah is talking to you about the knock-on effect of kashrut into the life of a child. So too a person needs to understand that really the pasuk is communicating to us something which is much broader than kosher. And that is, the decisions we make today are the children we raise tomorrow. The famous quote that we've brought many times before. A man goes to his rabbi and he says, Rabbi, you know, young couple. He says, you know, my child is born about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. He's 2 years old. We want to know, when do we start chinuch? When do we start educating the child? When do we start raising this kid? He's a baby, he's playing with toys on the floor. At what point does chinuch start? And the rabbi smiles at the young couple and he says, 20 years ago. So the decisions that we make in our life, where we go, where we live, what do we live close to, who are our friends, which schools, do we choose? All of these choices, they're not social choices. They're not about where your friends are sending their children to school. They're about what values are your children going to get from that school, where you live, which shul you attend. All of these things are a huge point in the future, in determining the future of your children. Now, I want to point out something that I think is really important, and that is, imagine you go to a synagogue, and the synagogue has a great minyan, but they have nothing going on for the children. You're making a choice for your children. Understand what I'm trying to say here. You think you're making a choice where you want to go pray. On the other hand, you're also making a choice that synagogue is not a welcoming place for kids. Understand that you decided that shul is not going to be a place for your children. If the people in the synagogue are very anxious, very shushy about all the children, they're yelling at the kids, etc., etc., that's a decision that you've made. Not that the cranky old guy made, that you made, because you're coming to this place. So my friends, it's very important to understand what the Torah is telling us, is that everything that happens before the child, in the lead up to the child, is something that plays an impact in the child itself. And my friends, I'd like to extend that lesson even further. The Shlomo HaMelech writes, Kechitzim biyad gibor, like arrows in the hands of the warrior. So too are the days of our youth. And the commentators explain, what is Shlomo HaMelech saying? He's saying that when a person is firing an arrow, and they're looking down the arrow as they're ready to let it fly, a variance of 1 inch. You move the arrow from here to here. Very small. Maybe not even noticeable. In the beginning, when you first fire the arrow, it's the same as the guy next to you. But every foot it takes further away from you, the difference in that 1 inch is more and more and more and more noticeable. So the tiniest deviance that takes place in the youngest of ages, over time, it's like compounded interest, and it becomes something that's a monster to be able to overcome. And what that means is that first and foremost, what we're being encouraged to do here, each and every one of us, is to recognize that, like when you make an investment, you want to go into a company and they're going public, and every dollar of equity at that point is worth hundreds, thousands, or maybe even at a certain point in time, millions of dollars later. Every little investment there is magnified to points that you can't believe. So too is the obligation of a parent to be able to consider and to think exactly what's going on. You're sending your kid to this birthday party on Shabbat of a family in the same class as your kid. And you're thinking it's just a birthday party. And you know what? I walked the child there. They didn't go in a cab on Shabbat. What's the big deal? So what? I told my kid not to eat there. Is your kid not going to eat there when they pull out the pizza from the non-kosher pizza place? Are they going to spend the whole day, playing video games when in your house, Shabbat is Shabbat? At a certain point, a person needs to realize that the greatest output comes from the youngest input. My friends, they've done many, many, many studies into the brains of adults, and they've realized that the most formative time in a child's life is the early childhood. And the ages of 3 to, I think it's still 7, is the window to be able to prepare the child for the rest of their life. That is kichitzim biyad gibor. Most people, they don't even wake up until the kid's 12. It's too late. My friends, if that's true about children, it's also true about children. And let me explain what I mean by that. In the Torah's language, there's a concept that's called Ele Toldot. These are the descendants. Now if you take a look in Parshat Noach, the pasuk begins and says, Ele Toldot Noach. These are the generations of Noach. These are the children of Noach. Noach, Ish Tzadik. These are the children of Noach. Noach was a tzaddik. He was pure in his generations. Now, I don't know about you, but it doesn't seem like the pasuk remembered what it was talking about. You tell me, Ele Toldot Noach, Shem, Cham, Yafet, those are his children, I understand. What does it mean, Ele Toldot Noach, Noach Ish Tzadik? The Chachamim explain that for a tzaddik, the mitzvot, the Torah, the Ma'asim Tovim. Sorry, Mechila, can I trouble you for a cup of water? Sorry. The mitzvot, the Ma'asim Tovim, the Torah of a tzaddik are considered to be his children, his toldot. Why? In some ways, the children that a person has, thank you so much. Please only answer amen if you're listening to this live. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol nebaro. Just a quick halakha. Most people don't notice. I remember decades of my life passed before I found this out. You don't make a beracha on water when you drink water unless you're thirsty. If you're not thirsty, you do not make a beracha on water. You just drink it without making a beracha. Okay, having dropped that, let's continue. The main children of a tzaddik are their good actions. Why? Because those good actions, those mitzvot, those ma'asim tovim, they create his world. Now I want to share something with you because I think that this is very powerful. The Gemara asks, if a person teaches, the Gemara says, if a person teaches his son Torah, or his friend's son Torah. Let's say you teach someone Torah. Ma'aleh alav hakatuv ki'il yilado. The Torah considers it like you gave birth to that child. To the degree that if a person is a real talmid, a real student of yours, it actually feels like they're your child. The Gemara asks a question. What happens if a person sees a lost object on the street? Lost object of his father and lost object of his rabbi. Not any rabbi. His Rabbo Muvhak. His permanent rabbi. The person who's taught him most of his Torah. That's how they define it. He sees the Aveda, lost object of his father, lost object of his rabbi. Whose object does he have to return first? Rabbi. The Gemara says of his rabbi. Someone once told me, of course, Gemara was written by rabbis. I said, you know what else the Gemara was written by? He says, I don't know what. I said, fathers. Why? Says the Gemara. Sorry?
I thought only if he taught you Gemara.
I said, Limdo taught him most of his Torah. To Rabbo Muvhak, it says. Okay? Now, and by the way, however you want to define it, ask the Gemara, why? Why would that be? Says the Gemara something astounding. Ze mevio, this one brings him lechaye olam hazeh, to this world. Veze mevio lechaye olam haba, and this one brings him into the next world. Did you hear that? Yeah? When a person's parents, they create the soul, the body of this child. And that has a finite shelf life. But his soul, his neshama, what he does with his life eternally is going to be decided by how much Torah he's learned, how much he's been influenced. Okay? You have some people, by the way, who their father is also their Rabbo Muvhak. What a special thing that is, to have your father also be your main rabbi. But my friends, what's the idea? His father has taught him the things that will get him eternal life. His rabbi. Because he's taught him Torah and mitzvot. Now, let's forget that for 1 minute. If that's the law in the halakha and the Gemara, let me ask you this. Which are your more important children then? Your children or your ma'asim tovim. So this is a very sticky thing. When the Gemara says that the main children of a tzaddik are his Torah and ma'asim tovim, what does that mean? What is that saying about his children? His children are also his mitzvot. The way a person looks at his children when they're a tzaddik is with a tremendous, a profound sense of responsibility. If your child is capable of providing for themselves, he's going to lead a great life. He has a great job. It's a great life, but zero spirituality. For a father that is a shomer Torah mitzvot, that's a tragedy. Because you know what? I've brought him to this world, but where's that going to get him? What has he achieved? The Gemara tells us something unbelievable. You know, in this world, the Gemara says the Bavliim in the Babylonians, they used to have a phrase that would say they would eat their bread with bread. Now, if you're a Syrian guy, you have hummus with your bread, bazegan, I don't know what you can have with your. But who has bread with bread? Fat guy probably. But who has bread with bread? Carb loading. Says the Mefarshim, normally when you have bread, you have it with something. When you have bread with bread, sorry, what are you doing? What are you doing? Listen to this, what the Gemara explains. Those people that the Gemara is talking about are people that would go to work and they would make money. And what would the money allow them to do? Allow them to buy a house, to buy food, to buy things, which would allow them to do what? To live another day, so that they could do what with that other day? Go to work. Which would allow them to buy food and have a house, so that they could go to another day of work. The work was sustaining itself. That's what it means. They ate bread with their bread. There was a never-ending cycle of effectively sustaining the system itself. Imagine a business which made exactly enough money to operate, but never ever turned a profit. There's 0 point in going to work. Says the Gemara, there are people who eat bread with their bread. What are they sustaining with their whole life? They only sustained that life. They didn't achieve something that will transcend that life. That's what it means that the children of a tzaddik are his ma'asim tovim. And even within his own children, what aspect of his own children are the greatest aspects that he's built, that he's created? Not just that he had a kid, just to perpetuate more people doing nothing. Yeah? Again, that's really the nikudah here. To run a business with no profit is the same as eating bread with bread, is the same as your parents giving birth to you so that you could give birth to children, so that they could give birth to children. There's no point in continuity just for the sake of continuity. Continuity is there so that you can build generation on generation. And that's why I would like to say to the Abadis, you don't want to ask for your children to be as good as your rabbi. You want to hope that your rabbi raised the sights of your community. So when the time comes for your children to be a rabbi, being a rabbi will be here. What do you got to be a rabbi to be a rabbi now? Maybe here. What we're hoping for is this. My friends, that perhaps is what we're being asked to consider. Isha ki Tazria v'yalda zachar. When a woman gives birth to a child, it takes a zechut to have a child, a merit. Now, many of us think that having a child is really only about biology. What does the man provide? The material. What does the woman provide? The womb. She nurtures it into a baby, and that's it. The Torah is telling us here, says the Chidah, having a child in the Torah's eyes, it's a zechut. The other day, my wife was on a women's panel, and she said something that was very profound. She said, you know, today in our world, forget anything else. If you have a child that is normal, that's well adjusted, that's happy, It's like you won the lottery. Right? It's very difficult to even just make a normal, healthy, well-adjusted child in the world we live in today. What a terrible state of affairs that is a true statement. You did that, Baruch Hashem. Wow, what a zechut. How special. Now, imagine if on top of that, you want to have the child pray, learn, give tzedakah. By the way, because you could have a child who's praying, learning, giving tzedakah, and is not normal, and is not well adjusted, and is not happy. I know a lot of people like that. Big check on the religion side. But on what it means to be a human, no check. Rav Yisrael Salanter, I believe, used to say that in the Pasuk it says, these are the generations of Noach. Noach ish tzaddik, Noach's a tzaddik. Everyone always looks at the last word in the sentence, not the last word in that sentence that I just said. Noach was a tzaddik. Says Rav Yisrael Salanter, you know what comes before that? Noach ish. Noach was a man. Noach was a mensch. Before we even talk tzaddik, Tamim haya b'dorotav. Noach was a mensch. You know what it takes to raise a mensch? You get up from the table, the children, without being asked, will clean up the things that they have on the table. It's lo muvan me'elav. That your children, when the waiter comes over, or the doorman opens the door, or someone welcomes them to the cab, your children look at this person, whoever he is, and say to him, thank you. That's not a simple thing. It takes zechut. But my friends, you know what underpins zechut? Preparation. Spending the time modeling every single thing you want in your child, modeling it for your kids. So, today, I'm going to ask everybody here to make themselves a little checklist of things that they hope that they'll see in their children and in their grandchildren. And I'll tell you something. What do we say as Jews? En somchin al hanes. You don't rely on miracles. So if you want something and you didn't plant it in the kid, why do you think it's going to grow? Now, my friends, let's take a wider look at this. A tzadik's children are not only his children, they're his actions. In the early stages of a child's life, or even before that, those things make a huge difference for the child. But if a tzadik's children are his actions, then in the early stage of a person's actions, everything matters. There was a rabbi who was building a yeshiva, and a man came to him and he says, I want to give you a very big donation. I love you, I love what you're doing, big donation. The rabbi said, thank you very much. Can I ask you if you could maybe come back in a year's time? Has anyone ever said that to a big donation? No. The guy says, sure, no problem. He comes back in a year's time, the rabbi says to him, we're not ready for your donation yet. Would you come back in another year's time? The guy is like, now already? He's doing it just because he's curious. This is fantastic. What's going on here? Okay? Year passes, he comes back with the check. He says, I'm here for the donation. He says, thank you very much. Takes a check, I really appreciate it. He thanks him profusely, blah, blah, blah. The guy says, Rabbi, I got to ask, I came last year, you told me not yet. I came the year before, you told me next year. Why? And the rabbi said, you know we're childhood friends. He says, yes. He says, you know I love you. And the guy says, I love you too, that's why I'm giving you money. I'm giving you money for this yeshiva. I'm not a religious guy. I'm not Shomer Shabbat, I don't eat kosher, I don't do this, I don't do that. I do almost nothing. But you know what? You were always a good friend. You were always a good man. And I know if you're doing something, it's very important. And the rabbi said to his friend, he says, we're so close, I know I could say this to you. I know you won't get offended. He says, you just said the answer. You're giving me this money for my yeshiva because you love me. But I'll tell you something. You don't love my yeshiva. You don't care about what's going on in the walls. You don't care about if I hire the best rabbi, not the best rabbi. You don't care about if I have the best program. You don't care about any of that. That doesn't matter to you. You love me, so you're helping me. By the way, a lot of tzedakah works that way. People give to people, they don't give to institutions or to organizations. He says, so if you don't care that it succeeds, I can't take your money when I'm first building the yeshiva. Your money doesn't work for the foundation of my school. Because the foundation needs to be built on love, on connection. By people giving the money that's being given for Torah. For this. After the yeshiva is built, then it doesn't matter anymore. It's already solid. It already has its foundations. Then it's a zechut. Be'ezat Hashem. And the zechut of you giving to support the yeshiva, it's actually going to have a knock-on effect on you. But in the building stages, when it comes to the foundation needs to be, you have people, you're very showy people. You give a person who's a show-off an option. You ask him, you're building a house. Where would you like me to spend the most money? On which part of the house? The guy might say, the lobby. Right when you walk into my house. The front of my house. The part that everyone sees from the street. That's what the guy would say. If you go to a normal person, what will the person say? Spend the most money on the foundation. The best materials on the foundation of the house. If I have a wall from IKEA or a regular wall, it's not going to fall on my wife and children. Bar minan. If it's a fancier one, not fancy one. A foundation that's rotten, bar minan is dangerous. The electricity, the pipes, the boiler is not installed correctly, the gas line, bar minan, explode. Everything that's underground, that's the most important part. Upstairs, I don't care which designer you use. Whoever you want to bring in to help design your apartment, your house, is not so important. But the foundation is everything. Ishaki Tazria v'yalda zachar. You know when the zechut happens? When she's first getting pregnant. When you're deciding then, when this child comes, what is the house that he's born into? What's it going to look like? And when we're talking about a person's achievements in this world, you're building a synagogue, you're building a yeshiva, you're building a mikveh. You want to do an initiative for the soldiers. Everything that you do in that inception stage will chart the course for what that organization will be. If the intentions are pure then, if the people involved are pure then it can last forever. And if everyone's involved in kavod then you know what will happen? Indubitably, they'll build a massive edifice on a foundation that was only concerned about kavod. And no matter how high it goes, the higher they are, the larger they are, the heavier they are, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Hashem should bless us to have the zechut to build things that last forever. Shabbat shalom. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer, Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu Zechut Israel.